Wow. There's nothing like a nice cold home brew. Hi there, it's Craig here. Today we're going to start talking about kegging. And this is first of a multi-part series I'm going to do about it. And I want to demystify the keg, and I want everyone to feel comfortable with it, and go out, get yourself some kegs and do it. So, kegging is great. I would never go back to bottling on a regular basis. There are times when I will bottle, just because I might want to age the beer a little longer, and I don't want to tie up one of my kegs when I do that. So bottling is not out of the question, but kegging is definitely a nice break. Everybody hates bottling. It's monotonous, it's repetitive, and it does take a while to carbonate your beer. So with kegging, providing you aged your beer a little bit longer in the fermenter, or maybe did a secondary fermentation in a carboy, you can get it into this keg, and within 20 minutes you can have carbonated beer. It's that easy. Okay, it can take longer if you want it to, or you can do the quick method, which I'll show you both methods. We'll talk about all that stuff. Now in this video I'm not going to do a kegging because I haven't got any beer to keg just now. I've got some fermenting over there, and it'll be a few more days. But we're going to talk all about kegs and the different parts of them and all the information that you need to know. Okay, so to keg beer, what do you need? You obviously need a keg, properly maintained, okay, with good seals and everything. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you need a CO2 tank with a regulator. What's a regulator? Okay, that was the mystical part for me as well. The regulator, basically, all it does is it regulates the gas flow. So, I mean, you've got, I don't know, 100 pounds per square inch of CO2 in this tank. You don't want 100 pounds per square inch to be sitting on your beer. So what the regulator does is it takes that down to whatever number you want. You know, if you're going to carbonate your beer at 30 pounds per square inch, then you would adjust this until it reads 30. It's as simple as that. There's two gauges. One is tells you how much pressure is inside your tank, so you can kind of tell if it's, you know, when it's getting empty. And the other one tells you how much pressure you're putting on your beer. So it's as simple as that. And you adjust that with a knob here. This is just a screw. So you've got that. You've got your line. Your gas line comes over and it goes to the inlet valve on your keg. Okay? So that's pretty simple. It's gray. Okay, and that's easy to remember because gray and gas both start with a G. All right? So it goes on the inlet valve, which would be this. Okay, but don't want to pressurize that. And the beer out line, I might get a few drips here, is there, and it's usually black, which is good because beer and black both start with a B. Now, why does it have to matter? Because you can't. This is a real simple setup. Okay, it'll get more elaborate as time goes on, but hey, it works. Now, why does it matter which is which? Well, because you can't interchange them. The gas one will not fit on the beer line, and the beer one won't fit on the gas line. And the reason for that is because there's different attachments inside the keg. We're going to take this apart in a minute and show you what we mean. So CO2 tank, regulator, keg, your gas line, and your outlet valve with a tap. Okay, you can get just one of those things. You use your thumb or whatever. Okay, you can mount that in your fridge. You can make a kegerator with it, whatever you want to do. Let's look at the parts of the keg. Okay, you've got your gas in valve. You've got your beer out valve. When these aren't connected, they're sealed. So nothing can get in and nothing can get out. This is a ball lock keg. That means that there's little balls inside here that when you pull back the collar, the balls disappear. Then you can slide it onto the thing, and then the balls lock in and it keeps it from coming off. That's why it's called a ball lock. They're made by Pepsi. There's a pin lock version of this. It's made by Coca-Cola. Not as popular, so you'll probably going to end up with the ball lock style. You've got your lid, and you've got your pressure relief valve. This is when you pull this up, it will release the pressure that's inside your keg. And there will be times when you'll need to do that, especially if you plan on taking off the top. You'll never get it off when there's pressure, because the way the top fits on, it pushes up underneath. See, it goes underneath and then it pushes up. So there's no way it can blow off under pressure. Okay? They're a little tricky to get on and off sometimes. You got to kind of fight with them. What you just have to remember is that the part that hangs down a little bit lower goes in first. You put it in, you turn it until it fits, get a little bit of a good fit there, and then you push down on the lock. Okay? So that's the lid. Let's take that off, and that's how it works. Okay? We'll just set that aside for a minute. Get a taste of my beer here. Let's calm down a little bit now. It's Cooper's Draft. It's good stuff. When you get your keg, especially if it's been used, you're going to want to take it apart and clean all the pieces. And once in a while, you might want to take it apart and clean it, especially if you're dry hopping or something like that, because you might get little pieces of hop material stuck in these valves. So what you need is a wrench, okay, a wrench that fits. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these things off and show you what's inside. This is the gas inlet valve. Okay, it just comes off. This is not a scary thing. It screws off, and you've got just leave that in there for a minute. You've got the valve itself. Inside here is what's called a poppet valve. If you just tap, you get it out. It's just a spring and a little rubber, washer there, or ring, O-ring. And this it's spring loaded. It pushes down when you put the gas line on. The gas line has a pin in it. It pushes down on this, and it lets the gas go in. Okay, so don't lose these things. It goes in there like that. And just hold on to that. You've also got your gas in line here. It's got a little rubber gasket there. Again, check it. Make sure it's lubricated. Make sure it's soft. It's not hardening and cracking or anything like that. It just goes up like that. This is again, this is where the gas goes into the keg. Okay? Then you just put that back on. And when you tighten it, I don't store my kegs with them tightened all the way. But when you tighten it, you want to give it a good tighten so that it's sealed. We'll just turn it around and we'll do the other side now. This is the beer out side. Okay. It's basically the same, except that the two of them aren't the same size. So you can't mix your gas line up with your beer out line. But basically their construction is the same. It has the same little poppet valve. Okay, same exact thing. These little valves are interchangeable. You can get them mixed up. And this is a little bit different than your gas line. It's your beer line. And it sits down at the bottom, and it takes beer off the bottom of your keg, and out it goes. Okay? Again, knowing how to take your keg apart is a good idea, so you can clean these things periodically and check them, make sure that they're functioning and doing what they're supposed to do. It goes in, and this all goes back together. Sometimes you can get little bits of hops stuck in here. Every time I keg, I take this apart and I just look and I make sure that everything is okay. I don't worry too much about cleaning it every time. You're going to run fluids through it and sanitizer through it anyway before you keg, so you're going to be just fine with that. Okay, so that's those. And the lid. I should mention that the lid has a rubber gasket. These gaskets will eventually probably wear out, but you can replace them. They will last longer if you keep them lubricated. This one still has a little bit of lubricate. You can get keg lube, which is made for lubricating these things, but I've heard of people using KY jelly. KY gel is sterile, and it's water-based, and it washes off really easily. It's a little easier to work with than keg lube. It's odorless, it's tasteless. It's up to you if you have the nerve to go into a drugstore and buy some of that stuff, okay? So that's up to you. Either rate, I've used vegetable oil. I do want to get some keg lube though, but you can use whatever. You don't have to lubricate these things, but I like to, because it keeps them in good condition and helps you get a good seal, which is important. Let's talk a little bit about the tank. This is a 20-pound CO2 tank. I went a little overboard on the tank. This is probably going to last me for a long time before I have to replace it. It weighs a ton. I had a hell of a time getting it over here. The tank itself, make sure that if you're buying a used tank, that you check the date that's printed on the side of the tank, or have somebody who knows about these things check it for you. If you buy a tank that's out of date, then you'll have to have it recertified, and that can cost money and take a few days. Okay, it's just like a barbecue tank. It's exactly the same thing. All right, you have to check that. So make sure you get one that's not out of date, because then you can start using it right away. This one here, when it's empty, I just take it and they'll exchange it for me for 40 bucks, and I'll get a brand new, or another tank. Okay, so that's the tank. Here's your knob on top that turns the gas off and on. There's really not a whole heck of a lot else to know about that. There's different sizes of CO2 tanks. There you can get a 5-pound, a 10-pound, and a 20-pound. I guess the advantage to having a larger one is that, it lasts a lot longer. It is a bit of a pain to go and get it exchanged and so on. It's heavy and whatnot. But this is going to be harder to fit inside of a fridge. Okay, so you have to think about that. I think a 10-pound tank is probably ideal because it's smaller. It's not as big as the keg is, so it'll definitely fit inside the fridge. Fridge, what are we talking about? Well, you need to have somewhere to put your keg to keep your beer cold. Okay, now I have to admit, at this moment of taping, I don't have a spare fridge to put my keg in. I do have a freezer, and every afternoon before I'm thinking might have a beer in a couple of hours, I put my keg into my chest freezer, let it get nice and cold, and then I take it out, hook it up, and it's cold. For the rest of the night, it's cold, not a problem. Let's just go over the procedure here, what actually goes on. So you sanitize your keg, clean it, sanitize it, get it all ready. I'm going to go through all of that in the next episode. Okay, so you'll know how to do all that, how to sanitize. You've got to run water through it and lick fluids through the lines and everything like that, and I'll show you how to do that. Once you have it sanitized and ready, then you fill it with beer. Okay, you siphon your beer into this keg. If there's any beer left over after the keg gets filled, you stick it in a bottle or something like that, or you just drink it or whatever. Okay. Now, when I fill my keg, I usually look for remember I showed you the gas valve? The gas valve has the shorter tube. I usually fill my keg just until it almost hits the bottom of that tube. Okay. I don't really feel comfortable having that tube dipping into the beer, just in case somehow it gets into my gas line. There's mixed feelings on that, so there's no real, rule on that, but that's the way I sort of think about it. So you fill your keg with your beer, you put your lid on, lock her down. Now your beer it's in there, that's it, it's safe. You get your beer in here, you put some gas on it, and then you do this. Okay? You put more gas on it. Okay? You do that again. Okay? You might want to do it 4 or 5 times. What you're doing is you're blowing out all the oxygen that's in the keg. So all that's going to be in there is CO2. CO2 will not hurt your beer, oxygen will. So once you've purged your keg like that, you can put a couple of pounds on it and just put it in the closet and let it age. There's not to worry about it. And then when it comes time to pressurize it and drink it, you can go ahead and do that. Now, I said there was different methods of carbonating your beer. Okay, again, 30 pounds. I'll put a link to a graph in the more info section that tells you all different ways of pressurizing. Because it depends on the temperature. If you've got a really low temperature, you don't need as much pressure. If you've got a higher temperature, like room temperature, you need more pounds per square inch. Okay. This graph will help you with that. It will show you what styles of beer and how much carbonation and so on. It's a really cool tool. Okay, but let's just go generic here. 30 pounds on your beer. So you set this dial up to 30, which is where? Up top here. I don't know, you can't see the numbers probably, but the needle would be up at the top there for 30 pounds. And you pressurize that and you leave it there. You put it in your fridge and you leave it overnight. Okay, the next day you come out, you take it out. What you want to do is you want to turn off your gas, disconnect your gas, purge the tank. Okay, turn your gas down to say 2 pounds or something like that, reconnect and take a sample and see if it's carbonated enough. If it's not, leave it another day. Or if it's sort of almost carbonated, maybe turn it down to 15 and leave it another night. And the next day, once again, disconnect, purge, turn it down to 2, put it back together, try your beer. The reason I say to disconnect is because I've had it happen where I start reducing the pressure on my regulator and my beer's still sitting at 30 pounds per square inch. It's going, whoa, wait a minute. It starts coming down through the line here and squirting out, you know, you don't want that. So I take the safe road. Until you know what you're doing, anytime you change the pressures, especially if you're going down on here, just disconnect your gas line so we're not going to have beer spewing out of here and going through your gas. You don't want that. My God, you ruin your regulator. Okay? If you want to leave it for, say, a week in the fridge, you just do a 15-pound pressurize. Okay? And just leave it. If you overpressurize your beer by accident, not a problem. All you do is take your gas off, let out, purge the tank, let it out. The beer will slowly release some of its CO2. And when it gets down to a point where you like how much carbonation is in it, then you can put a couple of pounds on it, start drinking it. It's not complicated. I know it sounds complicated. That's because there's so many different ways of doing it. It's not a cut and dried thing. You just have to use your common sense. Okay? You're not going to hurt your beer. Once your beer is in here with CO2 surrounding it, you cannot hurt this. Okay? I don't have a fridge to put this in. So I can't do the overnight thing. Okay? Or I could, but it would take a lot of pressure. What I did, let me put this back on there where it belongs and turn that on there. What I did was I put 30 pounds of gas on my beer. Okay? And I'll show you this. When I do the kegging, I'll show you this. What I then did is with the gas line connected, you take your keg and you put it on its side. You'd be doing this on the floor, obviously. Okay? You put it on its side and you just jiggle it like this. Okay? And you'll hear the gas going in. You'll hear the hissing sound. Every time you jiggle this, the gas will flow into the beer. If you do that for 15 minutes, even at room temperature, 15 minutes of that, your beer will be carbonated. And you can go ahead and start drinking it. Okay? The reason you want to put the gas line at the top, though, and not the other way around like this, is because I would really prefer not to have that thing underwater or under beer. Okay? I would really rather have this thing not get beer into it as much as possible. So I don't want to go all crazy and all the things like that. And within 15 or 20 minutes of that, you can have carbonated beer. Okay? If the beer is cold, it will carbonate quicker. So if you want to put your thing in a fridge or a freezer, get it nice and cold, then take it out and shake it, you'll get carbonation a lot faster. And that's what I do. Okay? So that's it, man. I mean, kegging is great. I love having it just right here. It takes up a lot less space. And as far as I'm concerned, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, the beer tastes better. You're not reactivating the yeast. You're not putting extra dextrose into your beer again to carbonate it in the bottles. It's completely in the dark. There's no light getting in. Just the way the tap handles the beer when it puts it out, it creates a nice head. All right. So I think I've covered just about everything I wanted to cover today. Hopefully that gives you enough information to try it. Until my next video comes out when I actually do it. But I think with that information that we just talked about, you should be able to go ahead and experiment with it. Again, in the next episodes, I will be actually sanitizing, cleaning, kegging, carbonating, and drinking the beer. Okay? So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me messages. Keep on subscribing, commenting, all that stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you very soon over there when we actually do the kegging. Cheers.